Yeah.
And I think for Judd and I, it's always like, that's always in some ways more interesting because like I can't relate to being one of the most brilliant comedians to ever live,
Right.
but I can relate to being a human being, you know, and trying to be an artist and trying to, you know, hold a family life together and trying to like navigate the world of ups and downs and failures and, you know, lack of confidence, you know, all those kinds of things. That I think is engaging to me as an audience member.
Dystopia Tonight. Dystopia Tonight.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, nice to be here.
How are you doing?
Great. I'm good. Are you supposed to give out the instructions for a speakeasy on your show?
Right?
Doesn't that
I know. I suck, man. I know the whole. I asked you before we got on if there's anything you want to cut. Let me know. And I think I need to cut myself.
Yeah, I mean, the people at that place are probably going to be bummed that
they really
cover, but
yeah, that's how much of a nerd I am. I'm like, yeah, you hit one, and then a lady comes in,
and the secret word is
yeah. I'm pushing my glasses up the whole time I'm telling the story. Oh god damn, I blew it, man. I'm never gonna be let into any place cool again. I almost did the same thing. So you know Tony Woods, right?
No.
Oh, okay. So, he's yeah. He's like,
you cut that part out where I say I don't know Tony Woods.
Yeah, we'll cut it. Yeah,
Woods is brilliant. I love.
We'll
Tony
go right back in. You know what? As soon as I remind you, I bet you. Okay, so he's basically like Chappelle's mentor.
Okay.
But I know him because he's always in DC and he travels everywhere. But like I performed in DC. I got to work with him, and the first time I met him, he took me out. And if you go out with Tony, you're not coming home. Like you might not come home at all. But like you go out with Tony, and it's a fucking blast, right? But he took me to this like underground club in DC. And again, nerdy me, I was like, the next day, I'm like, wow, we went to this awesome place, and everyone's like, what's wrong with you? Like, play it cool, man. Keep it, keep it on the DL. Like, relax. And I was like, oh, all right, sure.
You have the loosest lips for any Italian I know, John. Loosest lips.
Yeah, I should technically be whacked, but it's not. You know what? I think they just think I'm like, slightly at like a little special. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? They're like, I don't know what word to use right there, but I was just like, I think that's just it. Because Italians are like, they're what do you call it? Superstitious. So they probably think it'll be bad luck to murder me. I think that's my only advantage. You met me, Michael. I'm super short.
I wouldn't know. Bonfiglio, I would know nothing about Italian.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: as Italians who don't look or act Italian, do you find do you have like a large family who is like one section of it is like true Italian, like cross?
Oh yeah,
devil's horn.
But how does one act Italian?
Oh, oh man,
basically
good. We go for every question block on the street. We destroyed turtles. That's what I'm told. Mushrooms are a big thing. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, when I think of my family in Brooklyn, they're all very like hanging out on the street corner. Guinea tea.
Yep. I had a cousin who sold like bootleg sweatpants on 34th Street on the back of a van. So yeah,
absolutely, dude. Your cousin might be. Is it his name Louis? My uncle Louis legitimately would like. So this is Tom always gets like little snippets of my family life.
I love these stories. Yeah. He has some of my favorite stories.
So my uncle Louis was like notorious for just selling bootleg shit out of the back of his truck because he went to jail when he was younger, spent a bit of time in prison, broke out, fled to Hawaii, came back because he found God, and as you do, and when you're in Hawaii, and then turned himself in, did his time, came back out, born again Christian, sold bootleg shit. I'm not sure what the connection is. That's the path. So and he like really like hustled, man. He was great. Everybody loved him. But he sold my family these, and they all knew it was knockoff, but they bought it anyway. So it was like these knockoff Gucci bags or whatever. And literally on the same day, everyone's just snapped. Everything broke. Everyone was out, and they were like, "What the fuck?" Like clockwork, and it was crazy. And it was always at the back of his trunk. We'd like, "I got this for you. I got that for you. I got the wife. I got the high definition." We'd always talk in these terms that we didn't even sure were like. I went to school and I was like, I don't even know what the fuck he's saying, but he's really, really confident. So I believe him. Yeah. So that's what I meant. Now that I'm backtracking.
Okay. So that's how you act at time.
That's
what we're talking about.
Can you and I give a master class on acting Italian?
On how to be a lousy Italian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get into a fight with somebody over sauce and gravy. Right. And and spill food on your shirt.
Did your family call it sauce or gravy? We never said gravy. It was always sauce.
Yeah, it was sauce. It's always sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they only like a couple of them would flip out if somebody came in. I remember dating a girl and she said something about gravy, and my grandmother was like, "I'll fucking kill her."
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was just like, relax. I think it was mostly because she was Puerto Rican, but other than that, I mean,
made that something to do with it. Yeah.
I'm just outing my family. I'm sorry, I didn't even ask you a question, and I'm just like, my family.
Not that New York Italians are racist.
No, you're right. Thank you for covering my own ass. You're like, John, reel it in. Relax. What happened? But I want to congratulate you because the documentary is absolutely fucking incredible. Every comedian I know watched it. I'm so pumped that I got to watch it beforehand. So thank you. I've got to thank Kelly. I've thanked her a million times already, but I'll text her again. But I got to go to the premiere. I got to see the second half of it, and it was just one of the best comedy documentaries I've ever seen.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it was when we started it off, we were just kind of terrified because it's you can count on one hand the legends of comedy in a way, and to be tasked with doing a film about George, telling his story, and also having the obvious luxury of HBO, and we've got 2 parts, so we've got plenty of time. So if you leave something out, you have no excuse. And and just the responsibility of that was really kind of daunting. But we're really happy with how it came out and how people are responding to it. It's exciting.
It's so. I mean, do you ever get it when you're doing something like that, and even though you've got enough time, because I feel like you
never have enough time, but
yeah. Well, not I think I remember talking to Judd that night, and he was basically saying it could have gone you guys could have made it a longer film. You literally had so much footage. But does that comfort you?
Things that aren't in it,
Oh wow.
But I actually. I'm one of those people that, I mean, to me, it's always is it the right length? It's not about is it too long? Is it too short? It's am I engaged throughout? And I think with this, we had longer cuts and things, and it's all about the overall pacing for me as a viewer, and I think as a filmmaker too, that it's always if you've lost the thread of the narrative and you haven't, if you're not working to keep me engaged. And I think the other thing too, in terms of, again, the kind of just feeling the weight of making the George Carlin documentary, exactly what you said, that you sat next to somebody who didn't really know anything about Carlin. I'm always, and I've done a lot of kind of biographical films, and it's I'm not after the super fans, I don't care if the super fans are super engaged, because we've already got them, they're engaged. I get excited about that person who doesn't know Carlin and walks out saying wow, I really, now I know about him, and now I'm really into him. That's where my head is always at.
So with this in particular and other projects like that, what are the key things that you look for to get those people in? When you're going through someone's life, are you okay, this will capture them, this part?
I think it's just with anything, it's story and character, and I'm always pushing narrative momentum and making sure that there's some reason to care, and also just the relatable things with people, you know. I mean, one thing that we did with this film that I think, or that I was hearing from people, that they were kind of surprised that there was so much about his personal life. Because, and that was the thing, especially, and for like the comedy nerds and big Carlin acolytes, that was the stuff that they were sort of citing as being surprising. And I think for Judd and I, it's always like, that's always in some ways more interesting, because like I can't relate to being one of the most brilliant comedians to ever live, but I can relate to being a human being, you know, and trying to be an artist and trying to, you know, hold a family life together and trying to like navigate the world of ups and downs and failures and, you know, lack of confidence, you know, all those kinds of things. That I think is engaging to me as an audience member, and I think you know, if I can stay engaged, then hopefully, you know, somebody else will, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, you're right. Like even as I've been doing stand up for 16 years, but I love seeing everybody's in between point, or everybody what they're doing in between doing it, because even
when
like
it's not working, you know.
Yes, when it's not working. Because even when I was like, you know, like younger and kind of starting out, people always skip over for some reason, you know, the middle part. It's always, I did this, then I did this, and then I got famous. And then you're just like, what happened on the way there though? Anything? Nothing?
Like the South Park underpants gnomes, right?
I'm like, what is going on there? So I mean, one of the things I'd like to know too, because it's just trying to organize anything, like even when I'm trying to edit my own videos and stuff like that, like keeping stuff in my head, even for a short video, feels like an all day fucking process, right? And you had to direct this whole film with somebody's life that had so much of their life. Do you ever get a moment, like, is it any rest? Because I know you have to do stuff, probably work together collaboratively in the studio. But like when you're home, are you still going through it in your head? Are you still putting pieces together? Like, how do you do it?
Most definitely. Well, look, I mean, you know, Judd and I get all the credit for the film, but, you know, our editor, Joe Beshenkovsky, is absolutely brilliant. It would not be the film that it is without Joe. He's incredible. We worked with him on the Zendayas at Gary Shandling. He cut Kurt Cobain montage of Heck and Jane. And I mean, he's a total genius. And so, you know, he was our editor. And so he did an enormous amount of work. But in terms of having your brain in it all the time, the way that I tend to, like, it is kind of a 24/7 thing, that it's like you can't, you never leave it. And you know, with this particular film, there was always more stuff to watch, always more things to consider or go back to and rewatch and think how one thing could fit with another, or what was important. And so, you know, you're always just kind of thinking about it. And you do, and during COVID too, you know, we cut this remotely, and even, you know, half the interviews, if not more than half, but I did remotely. You know? And so you're kind of, you know, I think it's the same thing with any work now, that it's like, there's the double-edged sword of like, oh, I don't need to go into an office, but I never leave the office, you know? So that was definitely true for me on this film, that I was just thinking about it nonstop, you know. The only times I sort of wasn't was when I was working. I did a couple of other projects while this was going on.
Oh my God.
I mean, not. Well, and part of it was because COVID kind of pushed a bunch of things. And so I was just going from one thing to the other, and it mostly worked out. But like last summer, we did Ricky Velez's stand-up special, Here's Everything, and so that happened like during the edit of Carlin, and I think we were still doing a couple of pickup interviews too. So, you know, you figure out how to compartmentalize your brain, but yeah, it kind of doesn't ever shut off, you know? Certainly on this one, it didn't.
You mentioned that because I love the Gary Shandling documentary too. And I think was there stuff you were trying to mimic? Did you have that in mind when you were doing it? Because that was the first time I really saw, like with Shandling's documentary, somebody go really in depth with another comedian, but it's because, you know, it seems like you guys really care. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like it's done kind of like, I like the I hate to compare the two, but I watched the Robin Williams one. There was a couple. There was one done by his wife that I didn't really care for, because that seemed like it was about something different and not necessarily about him. But then I watched another one. It wasn't I think it was called Come Inside My Mind, which wasn't I enjoyed, but I still didn't get the depth that the Gary Shandling one had and the George Carlin one. It seemed like there was just something missing. I couldn't explain what. You know what I mean? But working on those two, did you learn from the Shandling one what you wanted to add to the Carlin? Did you treat them as two completely different entities?
Totally different, but I could see where there would be some overlap as a viewer. I mean, I didn't direct the Shandling film. I was a producer on it.
Okay.
But same editor, same graphic motion.
I was going to say, because stylistically, it's very much
Von Nadelman did all the animation and graphics on both.
Wow.
And Joe Beshenkovsky edited both. It's Judd. I was involved on Shandling. He and I, we co-directed this one. So, there was definitely a lot of overlap. A couple of the same producers, Amanda Glaze. So there were, like, I see why they would feel kind of linked. But
yeah.
To what you're saying, though, I think the intention in both was the same. It was like, let's really dig as deep as we possibly can and try and uncover the things about these people that we find interesting. The spirituality of both of them, the humanness of both of them, how they made their way in the world, their strengths and weaknesses, their failures, their insecurities. So I think those thematically, I think I could see why you see the connection between them, because we're interested in the same things,
which is really cool that there is, because it's almost like, and I'm not like, I don't know if you guys are planning on doing it or if I'm jumping ahead, but like, if you guys were to keep going with comedy documentaries, it's kind of like a thematic thing with, like, it's almost like it could be a series. Like the first one is the Shandling kind of thing. You got the Carlin, and I don't know where you would go to next. I know who I guess somebody else passed away. Or maybe there's Gilbert. I feel bad like dropping names now that are people that are no longer with us. But it is like, I think people want more of it because they saw this, and literally the conversation afterward was like, oh man, we got to see them do something on. And then it was like somebody named their favorite, like Louis Anderson or whoever. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are thinking about doing like a run of these, but oh my God,
it would be great. We're always looking for new stuff, and in both the Shandling film and the Carlin film, one thing that we were very, very lucky to have, and that really helped dictate what the films became. And I'll speak more about Carlin because I was more involved in it, but Carlin, George was a hoarder, and he kept everything, and the longevity of his career. So, from the combination of, television appearances, interviews that he gave over the course of 50 years, plus all of the personal stuff. And he, a lot of stuff we got through the normal archival channels. But some stuff, there's a couple of pieces in the film that didn't exist in an archive anywhere. It was just George had recorded it on and some of the quality completely sucks. And you can see one particular one in part one that it's a black and white clip that it's George and his wife Brenda on a talk show, and it's really terrible. I worry that it could induce seizures. We had to do a ton of work on it because it's flippy and stuff, and but we only had that because he recorded it on some early VCR, because he was kind of a techie guy and into gadgets and stuff. And so, having a very rich archival trove, including the handwritten letters and notes and all of that stuff, really did. I mean, he recorded himself as a child in the 40s. On a tape recorder, and we had that shit. Right. So that, going into it knowing that we had this huge, massive amount of stuff, really, really helped dictate the form of the film in a lot of ways. We knew that we could let George tell his own story, and not just in public, interview appearances on Johnny Carson, but we had the tapes that he had, 23 hours of tapes that he had recorded in the early 90s as sort of research preparation for an autobiography that he didn't end up writing, but that came out eventually as the book Last Words. So it was like, 20 something hours of recordings of him and Tony Hendra talking. And it's just done in this and you hear it, there's a ton of it in the film, where he's not being like presentational George, like talking to an audience. He's just talking, and it had a different quality to it. So, we knew that we had all these incredible assets, for lack of a better word, to kind of shape into the movie.
And I know you guys talked a little bit about it during the Q&A afterward, but I mean, we've had Kelly on the show here. It's got to be way easier to have somebody who's so open about their life and their parents, like working with you, like side by side. Because she was, I mean, I was one of the things I was kind of surprised with, because you never know who people want to talk too much about their parents if they're famous, or dive too deeply into their lives. But she seems to be just very much at peace with everything, and also just like it's super kind of proud and like knows where she comes from. And is that like essential? Like, you feel like you're never going to get that again when you're working on another documentary?
Well, to have somebody who has thought so deeply and processed her life the way Kelly has. I mean, Kelly had already, she wrote a book, a memoir. She did a one-woman show. She's a psychologist, a Jungian psychologist, and has done like decades of personal work. So she has processed her life and her story in a way that, it's very, she understands it and has thought very, very deeply about it, and has also communicated it. So having access to her, to interview her for the film was really super helpful, and to contextualize things that were going on in the family, that really nobody else who was living was present for, was really, really helpfshe has thought about it all so much, she was a great interviewee.
And you guys got to get, which I thought was so great, you guys got George's brother,
Patrick.
Patrick. But that was during COVID, though, right? You had to film all those scenes outside.
It was the very first interview we did. He was living up in the Catskills, and we knew he wasn't getting any younger, so he was a high priority to make sure that we got him. So we shot that before vaccines or anything. So it was all outside.
Wow.
And I wanted to, and we just couldn't, because it was just too dangerous at that time. But he talked about how he, in his house, which we shot the interview with him right outside of his house. He was talking about how every morning he would get up and he had a picture of George, and he'd put on some music and smoke a joint and blow the smoke on the picture of George every morning. And I was like, oh fuck, we got to shoot that, but we just couldn't, because it was just too dangerous. But it was great having Patrick in the film, as well, and Sally Wade too, George's second wife. Getting her perspective on things and having her participate was really fantastic. So we got I think we were able, George was a guy who, he, a lot of people knew him, and a lot of people, he was friendly with everybody, but not too many people knew him deeply. Like very few. And that was something that we heard again and again, that it was like, he was always nice, but I didn't really know him. He wasn't the guy who hung out all the time.
Well, the coolest thing about it too was, I think it was towards the end, maybe you did a montage of everybody kind of saying something in particular about George, like what kind of person he was, or what he thought of the world. And everybody had something different to say about him, which I think speaks to, like, all of us. Everybody has a different side. Like, nobody has one clear view of maybe one person might, you know what I mean? But everybody gets a different piece of you. And I think that's okay.
I think so too. Yeah. I did, about 2 years ago, I made a film about Patrice O'Neill, and he was a guy who, hung out all the time. And that was, a big part of that film was like talking to his friends who spent a lot of time with him, and different people got different versions of Patrice. And I think that was true with George, but he was quite consistent in he was always nice to everybody, was what we heard. I think he enjoyed being kind of an elder statesman later on in his career. But people didn't really seem to know him intimately, with very few exceptions, Sally being one, Patrick being another, Kelly, obviously. So, and Jerry Hamza as well, his manager and best friend.
He was hilarious in the documentary. Oh my God. So funny, that guy.
Yeah. So I think we got like all the people who are still living who really knew him well.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because I always think about stuff like this too, where like, do you feel a sense of urgency sometimes when there's somebody that you really want to make a documentary about, and you're like, these people aren't going to be around much longer, and their friends are, can we just start? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Patrick, George's brother, passed away about a month before the film came out.
Yeah.
Jeff Wald, who's in the film, he died about a year ago. So you're always, I mean, it sounds, morbid, but like, I mean, when we knew we had to start shooting, because the film was commissioned like right when COVID hit, so we, and so we were like everybody trying to figure out, how do you do, how do you shoot, how do you, but we knew that, like, getting Patrick to sit down and to talk to him was really critical. For sadly, for the the reason that you're saying.
Right. What's the process like for choosing, like, because you had you had Jon Stewart, you had Stephen Colbert, you had basically a lot of the key players, because that's that one interview with Jon Stewart interviewing him, which I thought was also a great piece of footage.
Yeah, it's nice.
Which is just it's so beautiful, because it really is. It's like crystal. It's clear. It's he's at the top of his game too, and whatever. Totally. So that was kind of nice to see. But what was the process like?
I urge people to watch that whole thing on YouTube. It's great. It's
I haven't. I have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's the Aspen Comedy Festival. I can't remember what year, sometime in the 90s.
Okay, wow.
It's
did John have the Daily Show yet at that point?
No, it was before the Daily Show.
I was gonna say he looked really, really young.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Yeah, because I think at the end of the thing he said something like, or maybe I just saw this clip randomly or something. But George said something like, and I can't wait.
He says something like, I can't wait to see what you're going to do next. Places. He basically like gives him a real stamp of approval and encouragement. It's really nice. I think I might be totally wrong about this, but I think it was like right around the time that the Jon Stewart show on MTV had gotten canceled. I think it was like right after that. I think. I might be totally wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was definitely like way. I was like, there's. Yeah, because he still had a different look too. So like, I don't think it's
the leather jacket. And,
yeah. It was fun. It was so cool to see that though. So what was the how did you guys figure out exactly who you wanted? Because I feel like he touched everyone's life. So you're like, it's got to be very selective.
Yeah, it was hard because you can't think of a comedian who wasn't influenced by him. I mean, there were a few people like Paul Reiser, for example. We knew he had that story, that personal story with George.
Yeah.
Where if people haven't seen the film, Paul will tell it better than I did. But when Paul was a kid, George went to his house because his sister, who was in college, interviewed him for her college radio station. And so Reiser tells this funny story that I'm not going to ruin. But so that was one that it was like, okay, yeah, great. Paul Reiser might not be the obvious person to include, but we knew that story was there. So
yeah. And he's a great storyteller. I mean, it was great.
And then there's some people who the influence is more obvious, like Jon Stewart, like Stephen Colbert, like Seinfeld. And we also wanted to have a diversity of ages and gender and race, and because to me and to Judd too, age was very important, because it is like, George touched so many different, he's influenced so many generations now of comics.
Right.
I think almost anybody, I mean, the fact that Stephen Wright, I mean, that's not somebody who I would immediately think. Stephen Wright's one of my all-time favorites. He was the first stand-up comic I ever saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, man.
And
in Boston?
no, in Utica, New York, in 1990.
Wow.
14. And yeah,
Oh, that's
I
great, man.
told him that at the interview, and he was like, "Man, that's really something for a 14-year-old to hear." And I was like, it was the greatest, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, you wouldn't immediately think that Stephen Wright would be influenced by Carlin, but he was his favorite, you know. He was his hero. So, and I think part of it too is because, you know, George had so many different styles over the years that like his DNA is in so many different comics. So we wanted to, you know, have somebody, you know, as young as like Sam J, you know, to represent like that generation, and Hassan Minhaj, you know. It's like okay, these younger people who, I mean, Sam saw him as a kid because her mom was into Carlin, but like Hassan says in the film that like he only knew him as the guy from Bill and Ted's, you know.
Right.
But once he really dug in and discovered what George did, it, you know, was life-changing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had long lists of people, and you know, but to have people ranging from Robert Klein to Sam J was like, that broadness of it was something that we thought would be good, you know.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you something it's not even embarrassing, but I mean, when I felt kind of connected in ways people were talking about getting a George Carlin album or like hearing him like late at night when they were too young to listen to him. Like it was kind of scandalous at the time. You know what I mean? You flip over to one side of the album and hear the dirty shit. But when I was a kid and there was Napster and I had AOL for the first time, man, I was ripping like George, like that was like, I was like just stealing that shit. Like like crazy, like, you know, in the middle of the night.
Which stuff?
All of his album, all of his old stuff,
the old stuff, like from the 70s,
the old stuff from the 70s. Because people,
when nerd, man.
Oh, dude,
big nerd. That's great. I love
100%. Yeah, all that stuff. And it was, you know, what's cool about that is, I would go into school then the next day and have the best fucking material ever because no one else was listening. You know, you know, everyone's listening to fucking Britney Spears and they're watching whatever, you know, the TV show, and I'm like, guys. Tits, man.
And that was a cool thing to like figure out, like when different people got into him, you know. So because he had so many different iterations of his comedy.
Well, that's the thing. Was Seinfeld was a thing when I remember when I was like, you know, starting doing stand-up and stuff like that. I could not think those guys were farther apart. You know what I mean? I would be like, oh, he probably doesn't. And then I remember hearing Seinfeld talk about him on like Larry King or something like that, and he was, you know, describing just his wordplay and stuff like that. I was like, oh my god, that's where the connection is. Like,
and the precision of writing, the precision of language. I got to work with Seinfeld a few years ago. I directed his special Jerry Before Seinfeld for Netflix.
Oh my god, that's great, man. That was an awesome
special.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. And watching him work and going back to his old material, I mean, the conceit of that special was that all of the material that he did in it was stuff that he had originally performed prior to his first Tonight Show appearance.
Right.
But we don't really reveal that until the end of the show. Mm-hmm. And so what he was doing was going back to his old material, and you know, he would work it out at Gotham Comedy Club in New York, and we'd go in and he would do this, and he was figuring out the stuff that worked now and how to make slight adjustments to it to feel more new, you know. But the adjustments were so minor, and oftentimes it was literally verbatim from the yellow legal pad that he had written it on in, you know, 1979.
Wow.
And it's still played and it's still funny, you know. Yeah. Because of that precision of writing. And I think that's where I see the two of them, as well as, you know, some of the observational stuff, you know, late 70s, early 80s Carlin, you know, dissecting words and dissecting phrases in terms of phrase and language. I hear that in Seinfeld a lot, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you just reminded me of something, because I remember when that Seinfeld special came out, he had the original notes. You know, I think he posted them on his. Yeah, I wonder.
And they're in the special. We laid them all out on.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's so cool. But like, that is, as somebody who's you know, doing this kind of stuff and basically a documentarian and all that, do you find the digital stuff easier, or do you much rather prefer the tangible? Because I feel like my generation has too much shit. Like, there's like, we've I've 30,000 photos on my fucking phone. I don't know what it's stupid. I'm too, and I can't, it's dumb. I don't need them all. I don't even know what they are, but like, I can't imagine somebody having to go through it. Sometimes I'm like, God, I'm going to die. I hope they just toss this fucking thing away. You know, like if anything happens, like, I hope nobody's going through shit.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing because, and I think we don't quite have the answer to it yet. When you go back to, and on the Carlin film, all of his notes and things like that, mostly we were working with digital scans already, because the National Comedy Center had already sort of processed and organized a lot of his archives. Mm-hmm. So that was a step that we didn't have to take. But we're still, but there were some letters and things that were discovered during the making of this film. You're looking at everything. You're looking at everything digitally anyway. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that really makes a huge difference. But to your point about like having 30,000 photos on your phone, George didn't have a phone.
Right.
Or, much later in life, but I'm saying, when he was your age, he didn't have a phone. So you're not dealing with the quantity of stuff. And as a documentarian who works with archival material on a lot of projects, like, it is kind of, I wonder what it's going to be like in 10 years when the norm is, making films about subjects who were alive during the digital age,
Yeah. And that's it. And that they don't have any, it's almost like the Star Wars thing where there's no paper in this universe. And you're like, fuck, really? That's going to be exhausting.
Yeah. But don't you think there'll be so much more in depth? Like, you'll see their personal conversations and thoughts through text message. It's creepy almost to think that somebody's going to stare through a different, glass at you.
Well, it's gonna be both, I think, because like there's gonna be the instances where like somebody has access to the phone and hard drive, mm-hmm. and then there's gonna be instances where you don't, and then you don't have anything,
right?
Like, so you'll either have 50,000 photos, or you'll have like almost nothing,
right?
And that was actually something on the Patrice O'Neal film. Because his sort of heyday of his career was sort of during that transition, and we had so few photos. And I remember talking to Bill Burr, who was an EP on it, and saying like just begging him, like, dude, like, where are the fucking photos of you guys hanging out? He was like, man, if anybody brought a camera, we would have made fun of them forever. Like, we wouldn't bring a camera to the club, but now everybody's got one in their pocket,
Yeah.
So I think time will tell, like, what effect the digital age has on this kind of filmmaking.
But to that point, I'm that guy though. Like, that's why I have 30,000, because I do want to document everything. Because even if it might be, I feel like I'll be like, I'll sift through it later, which obviously clearly I don't. Right. But I'm like, oh, I want to take memories and pictures of people and stuff. Because now my friends and I are older, and they're actually asking.
Right.
They're like, hey.
Here's the tip, though. If you're looking to document for the future, mm-hmm. take pictures, take candids. Don't do a bunch of arm around the person. It's very useless in a documentary.
Yeah, I can't.
Really
I agree with you.
It's like a moment of actual life happening.
Yeah, man, I love those.
We had people, sending us photos because we put out a little thing online soliciting pictures and stuff. Because mm-hmm. you can never have too many. And mostly what people would send is like, oh, here's a picture of me and George, after a show, like, the fan picture. And it's like, that's lovely. It's a wonderful memory for you, but it's
nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were a kid, I mean, because this is a very specific thing, like, that I wish, like, I had the ability to do, because I think I love documentaries. I think it's fascinating, especially when it's about a comic or somebody whose life is so, filled with just monumentous occasions or moments. But like, were you like that when you were younger? Could you like literally see things and put stuff together? Are you that analytical all the time? You know what I mean? Like, because I know a guy who's an accountant, but he's amazing. He used to kind of dabble in stand-up back in the day for a little bit, and then went into accounting. But he's got a little bit of the comedy mind and the accounting mind. So he would come to certain gigs and literally just scribe out like what you were saying in shorthand real quick.
Really?
and he's just got this, and he's like, okay, yeah, you organized it this way the first time, you organized it this way the second time, and he would just do that for a bunch of us in the very beginning, and I was like, I wish I could do that. That's the craziest thing. But were you like that when you were younger too?
Great. Not really. No, I don't think I was. No,
wow.
I mean, I do have to do that now, as part of my job, and especially like when working with comics, like I'll do exactly what that guy did for you,
Yeah,
writing down the order.
It's a very specific gift. It's like, it's insane. Yeah.
So I have a question. So we've been all about the George Carlin documentary. I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, how did you get to this point in your journey? Like, where did it all start out?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I just wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be Martin Scorsese or so, and then I sort of fell into documentary. I grew up in central New York, and when I was in high school, I grew up in a really small town. I was super into movies, but it was before streaming and stuff, and we didn't have an art house nearby. We'd only get like the big Hollywood movies and stuff. But I was a film nerd, and there was a documentary called Brothers Keeper that came out in 1992, and it was actually it was filmed right near where I grew up, and so the filmmakers self-distributed it, and they knew there was a local audience for it, so it played at a movie theater near me, which was a rarity for something off the beaten path like that, like a documentary to play in my town, or like 2 towns over. And so I went to go see it, and I absolutely loved it. It changed my view of what a documentary was. I didn't really much know what documentaries were. And I ended up meeting one of the filmmakers was there. It was made by these guys, Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky. Bruce passed away a couple of years ago, but Bruce was at this screening, and it was my first time ever meeting a real live filmmaker, a guy doing what I dreamed of doing. And he was like super nice to me and was like, oh, if you ever, end up in New York, give me a call. So a few years later, I was at NYU, and I tracked him down at a screening of their next film, a film called Brothers Keeper. And I met his partner, Joe Berlinger, and I basically just went up to them and was like, can I work for you for free? Can I? And they were like, yeah.
Nice.
So
holy shit.
I started interning for them. And that led to a full-time job and And so that kind of just
snowballed.
That's how I got into it. Yeah. And then I connected with Judd about 10 years ago. I was directing an episode of this show called Iconoclasts on the Sundance Channel.
Oh, dude, I did not know you did that. That's a great show.
Yeah, I only directed 2 episodes. I worked on a couple of other ones, but one that I directed was with Judd. It was with Judd and Lena Dunham.
Oh, wow.
And I met there, and we just kind of hit it off, and we stayed in touch afterward, and started working together. So
That's awesome. What was the other one you directed?
Pardon? It was Seth MacFarlane and Nora Jones.
Oh wow, that was a good one too.
That was the same.
Yeah.
But also, I produced on a couple I produced the one with Eddie Vedder and Laird Hamilton, which was one of the funnest shoots I've ever.
Man, yeah, I watched that whole series.
It was great. Oh really?
I was bummed. I was bummed they canceled. I love stuff like that. Anything that has to do. Oh man, it was so cool.
Yeah.
Did they really did it? And I'm just gonna ask you, but did they end it abruptly? Did they know they were going to end it? Did they only have an idea to do like a short run of it? What was the deal?
It was always kind of on the I mean, I think it was like 6 seasons or something. They were short seasons at the time. That was only each one would be like 6 episodes.
Yeah,
6 or 8. And then the final year of it, which was the year that I worked with Judd, it went from hours to half hours, and it was the show was sponsored. It was on Sundance Channel, which I don't know how, they weren't doing a ton of original programming, and it was sponsored by Grey Goose Vodka and Condé Nast. So like it was funded in kind of unusual way. And every year it would sort of be on the bubble, and then they'd start to try, but it was very difficult to book. It was very difficult to book, even though people really liked it, especially kind of like industry people really liked it. But to coordinate people's schedules was always really hard. And so I think it just kind of, they just didn't, after whatever season it was, I guess the enthusiasm or momentum just wasn't there. I don't know really what ended it. I don't know.
It's so weird because again, like I hope you guys do more of these and it goes in this kind of direction because I think I've watched almost any kind of series that started like David Steinberg had 2 different versions of his interview thing when he would interview comics, and I think one was on TV Land, and then that went away, and then another one came back on Showtime, and I was like, yes, and then Paul Provenza had the Green Room, and then that fucking went away. So every time I get like a little bit more.
I thought I heard a rumor that the Green Room is like maybe coming back or something.
Oh, dude!
I don't know if that's. I have no idea if that's true. I might be.
I'm gonna text Paul and be like, "Listen,
no, I love Paul. What a great guy he is.
He's so good. He's great.
Brilliant guy.
Yeah.
He's great in the Carlin film, I think.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely. He's enough. But see, like I think like you guys like there's you know, you and Judd obviously are doing these. Paul, I think, is doing another one. I think he's had a documentary out coming out about another comedian. You know, we had that one come out with oh my god, I'm blanking on his name, Boston comedian. It's a great documentary. You would know him because he was the one who confronted his pedophile. I think
Barry Crimmins.
That's Barry Crimmins. Great. That was so good.
Yeah, that's a fucking great film.
Yeah, that was like a great film. And
if anybody hasn't seen it, it's called Call Me Lucky.
Yes,
see that's that. It's amazing. Yeah.
But all these are coming out about these amazing people, and it's just I can't get enough of it.
I just watched the Del Close one, which was really good.
I haven't seen that one yet. Is it really good?
Yeah, I really liked it. It's called For Mad Men Only.
Oh, nice.
It's really good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there somebody that you want to tackle that you haven't gotten to yet that you really want to, like your next project?
You know, I don't know what my next project is, but there's so many people. You know, right. I feel like if I say something out loud, it'll jinx it and it'll never happen.
Oh man, I want to know who the Great White Buffalo is.
If it was set up, I would talk about it. Or actually, if it was finished and ready to come out, I would talk about it. But yeah, there's so many. And it's cool because it seems like this is a moment where people want to see this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there something when you're doing a documentary like this, like about George in particular, was there anything like jarring that maybe you found out when you were making it that you weren't expecting to find out?
You know, I think in terms of jarring, you know, his father abusing his brother when his brother, you know, physically abusing his brother when he was so young, and actually, you know, the violence in the Carlin household was a surprise that we sort of mentioned. You know, so I was, you know, I knew, like I think most even casual fans know about George, that, you know, he liked the cocaine in the 70s. But the behavior and things that led to, and just the intensity of his, you know, there's a scene in the film where he talks about, you know, so that he had a private jet at one point in the early 70s, and he tells a story about sitting alone on the jet, just doing lines and drinking alone.
Yeah.
You know, and he talks about how he would, you know, stay up for 4 or 5 days straight, just doing cocaine and screaming into a tape recorder. You know, it's like, fuck, man, like that. He wasn't partying, you know.
Right.
Yeah. It was dark. It was really dark.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you choose to, like, what? Because you guys handled, I think, the family stuff and kind of that period of his life like really well. Like it didn't like take it didn't take too much of a dark turn where you guys went deep into it. Because I think initially when I first saw it, I was like, oh man, it's just going to be one of those things that like we're not expecting to see like crazy behind the scenes stuff, or like that's the direction. But you guys like dipped into it, touched on it just enough, and then kind of brought it back into, you know, the rest of his life and career and stuff. Was that like a decision you had to make, like how much time you were going to spend on it?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, whenever there's big dramatic stuff, it can always threaten to take over your narrative, you know, and it sort of becomes about that. But we certainly didn't want to ignore it. Part of who he was and part of what his story is. But we also didn't want to like wallow in it, you know.
Right.
I think his story is bigger than that. And I think his character was bigger than that. You know, it's like what you were saying before about, you know, there's different parts of people. And I think George was definitely somebody who compartmentalized different parts of his thinking, different parts of his life. I mean, the dark shit it's there, it's in the movie, it's part of him, but I don't think it's the overriding, you know, descriptor of him. by a long shot, you know.
And I'm gonna ask you the part in the documentary where you guys literally do this montage where you're connecting almost everything that's going on today with stuff George has said in the past. Like, how that had to be an amazing thing to put together for you guys. Like, but it also had to be kind of like sad that you were probably like, oh my God, we're reliving the same shit George talked about years ago. Like, how did you guys wind up putting all that together? Was it, you know, like a last minute thing? Did you know that that's where you wanted to take it, or?
Well, you know what, one of the reasons for doing the film, other than, you know, kind of creating a historical document of this brilliant artist, was, you know, it's so rare that people are talking about a comedian's material so long after they've passed. I really can't think. I mean, before we started making the film, before it came out, while we were making the film, you know, you'd go on Twitter or whatever, and every 4 to 6 weeks, George Carlin would be trending. It's like, the guy's been dead since 2008.
Yeah.
You know, but it would be a different piece, or, you know, there's 1,000 memes. Half of them are not quotes that he ever said. And it's like, you know, but a lot of them are, that people are, and both sides of the political spectrum and all different ways of thinking that people connect to how he expressed himself. And so we always knew that idea and that part of his story was going to be part of the film. It's not a huge part,
right?
But it's part of it. And so we very early on, we talked about doing some kind of montage that took us beyond the years of his death and into the present day.
Yeah.
And so that particular section took us a really long time to get right. It's really carefully calibrated, and you know, it was hard because, you know, imagery and words are so powerful that it's like, if you juxtapose these words with this image, you feel one thing. With this image, it's another. And we, you know, had to skirt really fine lines, making sure that we felt that we were being accurate to George's words and messages and values, and putting something out into the world that we felt we wanted to put into the world, you know, that we could get behind. And we've been criticized here and there about that editorializing. And I say, so, you know, this is what we want to do as filmmakers, you know, this is George's film, but we get to say something too. And so, you know, I'm very pleased with that part of the film. I think it works nicely, and it's been affecting people. And, you know, it couldn't be more timely in a way.
It felt ridiculously cathartic, because I know what you're talking about, that he's been in the, you know, his name will resurface, and he'll resurface for the right reasons too, where you're like, oh my God, he has something to say about this issue. That's great. But then there's those lunatics, you know, who like, oh, George would have loved, you know what I mean? Like freedom and blah, blah, blah. And then we're like, what the fuck are you watching? Like, it's like people who hear a Springs, it's like, you know, like a conservative who's like, I love Springsteen, and they're playing Born in the USA.
Born in the USA, man.
Yeah. And you're like, are you like, are you not comprehending the lyrics? Like, do you not understand what's happening?
Yeah.
It's weird.
And I think that one of the reasons why George has continued to endure, though, too, is that, like, his material's never super topical. It's always about these larger ideas. Yeah. And like you said, like, it's fucking sad that he's still right about these things. You know, we still aren't doing anything about the environment. He was talking about that in 1972. Yeah. You know? So there's a thing in the film that is from, I think it's from Class Clown. It might be from M&AM, but where he's talking about birth control pills and you know, you know, women must really enjoy getting the permission slip at the pharmacy to have sex, you know. And it's like, the bodily autonomy, you know, we couldn't, sadly, these things haven't changed.
Yeah. It's insane to me too, because it's like, you know, I mean, obviously we just lost Roe versus Wade. They, you know, I mean, I've voted Democrat. I mean, obviously look at me, you know, I mean, I vote Democrat or whatever. I'm super liberal. I'm super to the left, you know, like all that other shit. But it's kind of funny. They like, they do not like it if you criticize Democrats at all. And I posted something recently kind of being like, you know, I was like, Nancy Pelosi in like 2017 said, you know, people who are campaigning on Roe v. Wade are hurting the Democratic Party. And it's like, you know, and I said that, and then somebody was like, look at this right winger trying to blame the Dem. And I'm like, I'm not right. Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, I'm just saying what our own party has said, like ad nauseum. Like, it's like you're not allowed to fucking criticize anybody, even to try to make them better. It's weird.
I think part of that is just the nature of internet discourse, but Carlin didn't, he was definitely, a lefty. I mean, there's no question. I think he had a libertarian streak in certain ways, and again, the libertarianism of that time, and that was another thing that we had to take great pains to really be super careful with, because of always making sure that the time in which he was saying things, that it was clear what he was talking about,
Right.
Yeah. Especially not like in comedy now, like the whole free speech question has reared again, but it's a very different version of free speech.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no comic who is being, persecuted or silenced or arrested for swearing on stage.
Right.
George was a guy who watched that, and then it happened to him, and it was, I always feel like if Carlin were alive now, because that's another thing you see online. What would Carlin say about, whoever Chappelle or Ricky Gervais?
Sure.
I always feel like Carlin would be more upset about the book banning than he would about trans people tweeting that they didn't like Chappelle's special.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's where his heart would have been. I don't know, but that's.
Yeah, because I agree, because I mean, even in the documentary, it's always the larger issues. It's never what's distracting. He was always talking about what's distracting people, what they're doing to get you off topic so they can go fuck you over behind your back.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It is the internet discourse, and that's the thing that's got to be annoying as shit. I got to ask you because go for it.
Yeah, we definitely do have some questions.
Yeah,
I was going to say, although I'm not going to lie, I would have loved Carlin to be around now just to watch his Twitter feed. I feel like he would have been like one of the.
Do you think he would tweet? I don't know if he would tweet.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would give it away.
Right.
I don't think he would give it away for free. I don't think that he was of that. Well, maybe he would have tweeted old material or something. I mean, I have no fucking clue.
See, I don't know. I feel like if he
I
was,
don't think
would he be right now if he was alive?
He was born in 1937, so let's do the math.
Right. So let's say we have a 90-something-year-old George Carlin around right now that's not really performing, but wants to throw his.
that I'm pretty sure of. I don't know what he'd be doing on Twitter, but I'm 99.9% sure he'd be on stage. Yeah.
That's great.
But we do have a bunch of questions actually from the audience, which we usually say for this time right before we give you the big three questions. So the Moore, who's a loyal fan of the show, said Carlin quotes. The big three questions. Fuck. Okay. Carlin quotes and jokes can be prolific. When going through his work, did any stick out to you?
So many, and there are so many pieces that we couldn't fit in. One of my favorites is his bit from, I think it's from Back in Town or maybe Jamming in New York. But the euphemisms bit. Do you guys know that about the shell shock and PTSD?
So good.
It's just I think it's just a great encapsulation of his wordplay and his dissection of how we soften language to obscure meaning. Even if I don't even completely agree with that piece, but I just think it's brilliantly written and performed. So many. I mean, it was really hard to decide what to put in. And again, that was someplace where it was like, okay, what is moving the narrative along? What is illuminating a new facet of him? It was how we kind of, made those decisions.
Yeah. Jackie also wrote, it says you were an extra in Obvious Child. Great film. She was doing her own work.
IMDb, yeah. I was a good friend of mine produced that film, and it was a real indie. I mean, it became big, but they were shooting a scene in a bar, and my friend who was producing it just called all her friends and was like, "Who can show up and be an extra?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll show up and be an extra." So I am. You see me way in the back in one of the stand-up scenes. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's fun. That's really fun. And then I know. Oh, this was a good question actually. But what moments in time will define your life?
That's a really good question. I wonder if they mean like historically or.
No, I think like if somebody else was shooting a documentary about you.
That's a good one. I would say probably one of them would certainly be that screening of the movie Brothers Keeper back in 92 or 93 when I was in high school, and that unquestionably changed the trajectory of my life. Yeah.
What did you want to be before that? Like pre that?
I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to make movies, but
right out the gate.
But I hadn't thought about documentaries. You know, I had never seen a documentary that felt like a movie to me. You know.
Yeah. And
that did. You know, and the humanity that it's a great film. Everybody should see it. It's called Brothers Keeper. Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky. It's great.
I'll check it out. Absolutely.
I'm definitely going to check it out, especially because I find it so compelling. We got to have you back because I feel like there's so much of you I want to dig into as opposed to your work, because I feel like that's where, like, to me, that's where like the really interesting stuff comes in, because you had a dream from young and it never like wavered from it. Like you kept on that pursuit of it.
I think that's a gift though. And I see kids who don't know what they want to do. And it's hard. I think it's really fucking hard. And I never had that. I was really lucky, I think.
Yeah.
And you had like a supportive family, like when you were like, I'm doing this, they were like, do it. That's your dream. Go after it.
For the most part, yeah. They weren't super stoked when I decided to drop out of college, but you know.
What were you studying in college?
I was studying film at NYU.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, and you just left to do film, which is great.
Left to take a full-time job with Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
I actually failed my documentary, the one documentary class that I failed, and I failed because I never showed up because I was busy working at my internship. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Is there anybody that today, comedy-wise, that reminds you, that you feel like is, you know, the next Carlin? Not the next Carlin, but let's say somebody who like takes up that pedestal. Because I know there's a couple in my head, but I mean, like
I know exactly what John's getting at.
No.
One and this one.
Oh my god! I just have dumb long hair. It's just COVID hair that I'm refusing to get rid of. Is there anybody on your mind?
Look, John, I get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel self-conscious about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Brothers in hair. But like, see, like you got to interview like you know, contemporaries of his and the younger crowd or whatever, and you're also a comedy fan yourself. Is there somebody that you're like, oh man, this guy's the next one?
You know, the weird and unique thing about Carlin is I don't think we'll ever see another person like Carlin because of the time that he started out in, and the ability to reinvent himself so many times was so connected to the time that he was in, you know. And I think it's people now are, you know, all comics are always trying to find their voice, right? And people do go through transformations and changes, but I think that there's more likely potentially perhaps a cynicism about somebody who changes their whole vibe and look and appearance and everything and their act, that I think we might not buy that today.
Right. Well, you don't get to buy it because it happens in real time for everybody. It happens on social media that, you know, like one day, you know, Carlin was straight laced and short hair, and then the next time you saw him on TV, he wasn't.
Yeah.
You didn't get to watch it happening and go bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, we know who you are.
Right. You know, that did have, you know, if you think about like Bobby Darin or, you know, I mean, there's definitely some examples of people who tried to, you know, be hip, but I don't think it was authentic. And with Carlin, it was. And I think that people could just kind of sense that.
Yeah. They did not accept Bobby Darin when he changed over.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God.
Or even I think about like when Metallica cut their hair, you know, like that big deal. Or, I mean, there's a million examples, you know.
Who's the guy who sang Garden Party? Ricky, oh my God. Yes. That was another guy who was like a musician who did like the doo-wop stuff, and they wanted him. And then the whole song Garden Party is about he went to perform at the garden with his friends, and he had new songs, and they were like, fuck you, dude, you know, do your old shit. You know, and he was like, God damn, can a guy write a new song? What the fuck?
Right.
You know, they wouldn't accept him.
I think in music it's a little different though. I think in comedy, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But I think again, like you can hear the DNA of Carlin in all kinds of people. But you know, one cool thing about him, like starting off so early in comedy, you know, when stand-up was still kind of a new thing, is, you know, a lot of the performance craft that he honed back in the early 60s, he carried that through till later. You know, you still see the mugging performer that he was, and a lot of just performance technique that he honed early on, he carried through to his later stuff, and so he always just feels kind of a little different from everybody.
Well, yeah, there's you can tell there's like still like a joy to it. Like it's not all cynicism and not all, like he was enjoying himself. Because even when we had Kelly on, she was very much like, you know, he would be kind of that fascinated, starstruck kid when she would come back from, you know, the celebrity high school she went to and be like, so and so's kids go to, you know, and he'd be like, really, what are they like? Are they weird? You know, like just like, and that's like, I think that you saw that when he was performing, even when he was doing his other stuff.
Yeah, I think that was that outsider part of him that he always felt, you know.
Yeah.
He wasn't part of the big club, even though he was kind of the king of it, you know.
I also think, like, for me, I like when you don't get like there's like the documentary side of it. When I'm watching somebody's life, I really want to know every fucking piece you can find, right? But when I'm watching somebody on stage, sometimes I like a little mystery. I really like that. I think I have a hook on this guy. I think I know what his opinions are, but I don't know too much. And the mystery there, I think, keeps you coming back to see them be creative, because you're like, maybe I'll get a little more here, maybe I'll get a little more there, and then, you know, then when they're gone, then you're like, all right, now give me all of it.
Right.
Dig through his fucking sock drawer. I want to know everything. They're not going to be giving us anything else. I have to ask you the big three so I can get you out of here, because I feel bad. But thank you for staying, by the way. I appreciate it.
This was I was nervous, and this was actually fun.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Now I'm extra nervous because I don't know what the big three are, and I feel bad, and I should have come up and had prepared really cool answers. So they're going to be that. Yeah.
I just drag out three random people. I'm like, one of them lives. And you have to decide, what kind of fucking show is this?
Like Squid Games.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't caught me yet. They don't know where I am. The fake. I've been doing this since mid-pandemic. Oh God. Everybody has to testify against me. That'd be weird. But on par for comedians these days. I'm gonna cut all that out, by the way. So first question is pretty generic, but if you go back in time and talk to your younger self at any age, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
Wow. I think I would probably say, I don't know, because I feel like I could still use that advice. So I think maybe it's like, I think you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Like, just keep working,
I like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I really like hearing that from people who are successful, because it's you get this impression that everybody is okay and you're not, like 90% of your, you know what I mean? Like, because you're just like, I'm the fuck up, I'm the one who's not doing well. But like I've talked to like 170, I think we've had like 190 guests so far, or whatever it is. A lot of you are like really great at putting it like exactly right, where you're like, I was not okay. Like, and then just kind of hearing that, I think, makes people go, oh, cool, it's not just me.
At the same time, it's very weird for you to hear myself referred to as successful, even though I'm looking at, on the screen now, it's like, oh my God, there's this cool George Carlin poster and has my fucking name on it.
Yeah.
But it is like, okay, but what's next? Like what, like,
right.
That's always.
Are you good at moving away from projects after you're done?
Pretty good. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's, I think it's one of those things I'm always curious about, because I feel like, it's like half and half. Some people are like, oh man, I'm like, we've had people who are honor musicians who listen to their last album. They're like, man, I should have really re-edited that.
That's why I don't really go back and look at it. Because when I do, occasionally it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
That was going to be my question. Like, do you go back and watch some of your older stuff on occasion? No.
Pretty rare. Every once in a while, there's a couple of things that I'll watch again, because to has good memories or something, of the making of it.
Yeah. I read an interview with Gene Hackman a long time ago, and he basically said he's never seen a movie he's in. He gets done, he never goes to premiere, nothing.
I think that's nuts.
Right? And somebody was like, "Don't you want to learn from your performance?" And he was like, "I already had the job."
Right. It's like people who don't read reviews, and it's like, I mean, it's terrible usually, but and it's anxiety producing. But like, how can you like not want to know what people think of your shit? You know,
I agree.
I don't know.
Now I just feel like we need to get Gene Hackman on for me to say, "You've never seen Superman? How?"
Yeah, there's some real classics out there where you're like, "Come on, man!"
Good. It's really good. Yeah.
Christopher Reeve, the ultimate Superman. Yeah. It's sad that that's the best Superman movie they've ever fucking made. It's just they could remake it as many times as they want. They're never going to get it better than Chris Reeve.
Well, that was when superhero movies could be like fun.
Yeah.
Movies are fun. I'm not.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah. DC just kind of, they don't know what to do with their god. So
I get a little fun. I went back and watched Batman Returns not too long ago. Fucking so much fun.
Yeah.
What movie that is.
Yeah, that is a beautiful film. Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
No, the new one. Like it was fine. Like not to slag it or anything, but like, why is he the Penguin?
Yeah,
I don't know. In Batman Returns, he's like eating fish and he's all fucked up. It's like, that's the Penguin, you know?
Yeah, that's Oscar Cobblepot if I ever saw one.
You know what's weird about that film? With the Danny DeVito was just having lunch and they filmed him, and they were just like, "Can we keep this?" Yeah, and this is going in. This is going in, Danny. Keep it going. So second question: what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
College for me.
Nice.
Film school. Film school.
Film school had to end.
There's anything wrong with film school. If you're in it and enjoying it, please do it. I don't want to be negative about that. For me personally, it wasn't the move.
Right. Yeah. I wish people would accept that more, that there's just some people who do not learn that way. Because I think that's leaves a bad stigma, because I was the same way. I don't learn well that way at all.
And certainly in filmmaking, like no one's ever one time ever asked me my degree ever.
It's a good point.
It's not a job that anybody gives a shit.
Right.
I could have gone to Harvard and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. And I love that you were like, listen, I just want to come work for you guys. You were ready to pay your dues out the gate. Like a lot of kids, a lot of people now think they should go straight from like being in their parents' house to TikTok superstar, and there's no in between of work, like to really hone your craft.
Right.
Like, I just want to learn from somebody that I think is great at what they do. I think that's a big thing.
I just figured it was the only way I possibly could, because I had no connections, anything.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I get to work for free for these guys and learn some shit and actually be in that world that I've been dying to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was also luck and privilege, I mean, so.
Yeah, blessed, definitely blessed. But I feel like a lot of the industry, like a lot of the entertainment industry, is connections. It's who you meet, who you know, and then like being around those people and then moving along, right? I mean,
they have to like you.
One thing always leads to something else.
Yeah.
Good or bad, So if you can get in somehow,
foot in the door,
you have a chance of figuring something out.
Yeah. Does it I know I've got some photographer friends who they really practice what they do. They have a good eye for it and all this shit. And then they just see these apps that come out that are like, it draws your face. You know what I mean? And they're like, fucking, oh God, this is how I make money. You know what I mean? And everybody gets to do it. Is it like that in film too, where you're feeling like, oh man?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, technology is always like good and bad. I mean, I think it's amazing. Like, when I was a kid wanting to be a film, it was like, oh, so-and-so's uncle has a VHS camcorder we can borrow for the weekend. Or, I had a Super 8 camera that I got at a garage sale that I would, and
that's so cool.
Now everybody has like an HD camera in their phone.
Yeah.
Amazing. Right?
Tools and stuff. So it's, for somebody like me who came up in what's now the old school, it's scary because like there's this whole generation of people, of filmmakers who like grew up doing it and knowing all the tools and everything, and that's what one of the things that keeps me awake at night is like, how quickly am I going to be a fucking dinosaur, you know?
You know, when I was younger, I thought the next thing, because, you know, people went from like VHS to, you know, to DVD to Blu-ray, whatever it is. I was like, I wonder what the next thing is going to be. It's going to be like a hologram, or we're not even going to have to, it's going to be on our wrists or whatever. It's not. It's just younger people being better at being in front of a camera, being raised from whatever, because there's comedians that are like brand fucking new and they suck. And they have really good footage, and that's it. And I'm like, they have something, because I'm not used to doing like, you know, I set up my camera to record my set to watch it later, not necessarily to post it immediately. But they have like HD fucking like, and all their friends are good at it. So like their friends are their team, you know what I mean? And they're doing it for free because they're really good at editing. And I'm just like, I don't have any of that shit. That's not. I have to get my game up.
But I think that what ultimately wins out, though, is that if you're a comedian and your material's no good,
yes, absolutely,
it's like anything else, you know, like you can have all the whatever that might get you to a certain place, but if you don't have the goods to back it up, it's not gonna, you know.
Yeah. The last question is tied into the show. If this was a genuine dystopia more than it is now, it could be aliens.
More than it is now. Okay.
More than it is now. But like absurdly more. Like aliens or zombies or a comet, like in Don't Look Up, or you know, laser, whatever it is. How would you want to go out? What would be your epic death? Last day for everybody on Earth, by the way. But what would you want to be doing?
What would I want to be doing, or how would I want it to go down?
How would you want it to go down, and what would you be doing while it's going down?
Okay. I would want it to be like, you know, like a comet or something like that that's big and fast, you know, nuclear explosions, ideally something that you could see for a quick second.
Oh.
And I would be, you know, someplace in nature with my wife and other people that I love. So
nice. That's very nice.
Love it. Answer, but
yeah, no, no, that's great, man.
I should have done the research.
I thought you were going to say recording it. Like capturing that last second.
That would have been good, but then who's gonna fucking watch it? When people are, you know, you're at a concert and people are like filming. It's like, dude, you're never gonna watch that footage. It's terrible.
Man, dude, I was like, at a
put it down and be in the moment. You know.
Yeah. I was at a Tears for Fears concert because it's 1985 again, and I was Kurt was, you know, I can't remember what song it was, but it was like literally one of their best songs. And in the middle of it, he goes, "Put your fucking phones away," and then, but he like worked it into the song, and I was like, I love that he ruined it for everybody in that moment. Like he just worked it in. Put your fucking phones away. Like, that's not the lyric.
Yeah.
So good, dude. It was a blast getting to know you a little bit better and having you on the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I hope you come back.
Pleasure.
Anytime.
Sweet.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks.
Have a great one, man. Night.
Take care.
Peace.
Dystopia Tonight.